Welcome to Conversations with Kelly, and today joining me for today's topic on child support is Risa Moore.
Hi, Kelly.
Glad to have you back, Risa.
Glad to be back, Kelly.
So let's dive right in. Child support for some is an ugly word, and for others it's a yay, I get it word. Let's start here. Do you think that some people go after child support for the wrong reasons?
Yes, I do believe some people go after child support for the wrong reasons. Most go after child support for the financial reason to pay back the person that needs to pay.
Kind of like what you're saying is like if they did something to the mother, the mother in turn will go after child support.
Yes.
And you're right about that, and I'm not going to say this is true for all women,
right.
But I've been around women who, because the relationship has dissolved, or because the relationship, there was some infidelity in the relationship, or whatever caused the relationship to fall apart, they then run downtown and get child support without giving the man a chance to even try to, take care of the child. So in those cases, unfortunately, I would say that that's not a good reason to go downtown to file child support. Should we give men opportunities to take care of their kids?
I think we should give men the opportunity to take care of their children. And the reason being, some men, once you file that child support, they get to be mean and evil, if you want to call it that, and they decide not to pay it. Whereas if they maybe was, talked to and asked to pay it, they may have paid it and maybe got even more out of the man.
Right. Well, actually, within my family, someone was going to get child support. Well, actually, with my own people that are surrounded around me, I had given the advice to always give the person the opportunity to pay. And then if you set up an amount that both are comfortable with, and then if they start not paying, and I'm not saying there's times where you hit rough patches, I'm talking about where the excuse is very lame,
right?
And you start seeing a consistency in non-paying than paying, meaning that I might pay this week, but I'm going to come up with all these excuses for the next 3 weeks. I might give you this, or I might just give you half of this. When it gets to that point, it's time. I feel it's time to go on downtown. And what I don't like is when a woman sees that the man is not consistent, or when I say not consistent, I mean they are paying something. Not just not paying nothing. When they're not being consistent with what they were supposed to be paying. Number one, I tell my grown adult children, my daughters, actually, that's what I'm speaking about. I tell them, well, it's only one that I'm speaking about. I told her, I said, when they're inconsistent like that, what your problem is, you're counting on it. Yes. You can't count on inconsistency. So therefore, when he don't do what he's supposed to do, you're pissed.
Right.
And then guess who's calling on the phone? Mom, I can't believe. Yes, you can believe. If you see the pattern, then we know it's there. So then you bring it to their attention. And I always say you give them that warning. I don't believe in just a surprise child support letter in the mail. But I would give them that warning, we're going to have to do something, or I'm going to have to go downtown and allow them to take it out of your check. Well, once that threat has been made and the inconsistencies continue, I don't go back. And I had advised my daughter not to go back. And for a while there, she was kind of still trying to, give him the chance. But eventually, when she got to complaining to me about the inconsistencies, I said, you know what, do what you got to do. No more arguing back and forth. No more crossing your fingers hoping that he's going to pay. You go down there and take care of your business. And what she found was what he was giving, what they had came up with, he was giving was a lot less than what they slammed him for downtown. But again, sometimes I think that men take for granted how easy they may have it financially outside of the system. Yes. If they would just put forth the effort. Now, I do believe there's times when women are vindictive and a man is struggling to pay or is paying, and doing other stuff with the children, then that vindictiveness goes down there and do it anyway. Probably as a way of spiting that person. So again, you are right when you say that sometimes women do that. So with that being said, how are the children affected?
Well, I think that just depends on whether or not the children are old enough to know what's going on with the child support, or whether the parents are actually sharing with the children their own attitude towards the other parent. If you have an individual who's receiving child support and actually taking care of the things they need to take care of with the money, not going out clubbing or buying clothes and that type of thing, then I think the children wouldn't be affected. I don't think so. And not to say when they get their money they can't go buy themselves anything, because you have to think about it. They're using their money first to take care of that child.
Exactly.
So even though there are some parents that are paying out, saying, well, she does this with the money, she does that with the money, we have to stop and think that even though she's doing this and that with the money that you're giving through child support, whatever she's earning, she's doing something also. And maybe the money she had put aside or he had put aside to do for herself had to be used because the child support wasn't there yet.
But do some men get it twisted because the money is being taken out of their check before they see it, and they know that it's actually being given to the woman? And let me pause right there. Not all times do the money get to the woman on a consistent basis, because I've had experience with it, and them, just because they're taking the money out of the check don't mean it's coming to you right away. Or there may be some other issues where if you've ever been on assistance, that money is actually going to get paid back to the county. So when he's looking at what the woman is doing, that doesn't necessarily mean that the money that they're taking out of the person's check is actually being spent the way that they think that it's being spent.
And you're right, because if the custodial parent actually is on the system at any point in time, the county does take back that money through child support so they can repay that debt. If they're currently on any type of assistance, they have to pick and choose which one they want, because they can't have both child support and assistance. So they have to make that decision of which one they want.
Do you think men get it twisted? Because I know this was said to me in speaking with, from my own experience and speaking with others, some men feel like whatever they give you is supposed to automatically go to the kid. Like, for instance, sometimes I've even heard where one man told the girl, I just gave you such and such. They just took this money out of my check. You need to go to the mall and buy such some tennis shoes, or you need to go buy them some clothes and things like that. But what men are failing to understand is your money does not mean that I go buy JoJo a new pair of tennis shoes. Now, if JoJo's tennis shoes is raggedy and things like that, yeah, I do need to, if you're paying, not only if you're paying, but if his tennis shoes are tattered, if it's in the budget, we're going to get the tennis shoes. But that money, if I'm not mistaken, is supposed to be going towards running the household.
Correct.
Because where, I'm just going to say average dude, where dude is averagely paying maybe, let's just say $50 a week. But you paying, the custodial parent is paying rent, electric, water, gas, food, and all that. That doesn't compare to that $50 a week. And both parents should be responsible for housing that child.
Right.
Now, that's Kelly's opinion, but I believe that's the way it should be, or it could be.
Yeah, and I believe the same thing, because, like I said, that income is to take care of that child's well-being. And well-being may not mean to the child support system a pair of Nikes. You know, it may mean a pair of Payless shoes, because with the custodial parent's income, all that other stuff has to be taken care of.
Yeah, for instance, like medical is coming out of the check. There's all kinds of things that come out of your check besides average taxes.
Right. And I do think the parent that is paying the child support sometimes really does get it twisted. And they actually, to me, have the lighter load, especially if they're not a parent that's participating with the child's upbringing. Because the custodial parent has to be there and support them through schools, sicknesses, and everything that they need. Emotional stuff, spiritual growth. That parent has to be there. The other parent, if he decides to not even, or she decides not to even do visitation, doesn't have to. And there's nothing really that a custodial parent can do. So it's a lot more behind child support than just the financial part of it.
And we're talking on the side of that woman that's doing what she's supposed to be doing.
Right.
Now let's flip it back around. What about that woman that is being vindictive? And we know that there's some brothers out here, not even just brothers, let me just clarify that. We know there's some men out here that are really wanting to do what they got to do for their kids, but because of the custodial parent's attitude, or because the relationship has dissolved, they're holding these grudges and they're making it super hard for these men to take care of their kids financially, and not only that, but to be a part of their child's life, because now I'm with so and so, I can't see Junior.
And I think on that behalf, we have to step outside of the child support system and go to what we call Ohio Rule 27. You know, because with the Rule 27, the non-custodial parent actually has their rights to their visitation as long as that was agreed upon through the separation. So they can always go back on Rule 27 in order to see their visitations.
When you say separation, is that for people that were married?
Even with, you know, people that never been married, you get the Rule 27 as long as you go and get that. You have that opportunity to have your visitation set up every other weekend and one day during the week, and then, you know, you're alternating summer, spring break, and that kind of stuff. So
that's good information, Risa, because I never heard of you call it Rule 27? Yes. I've never heard of it. Is that something that they keep quiet? Maybe it's just me. I just never heard of it. I just thought that I thought whoever had the custody had the control.
No. And that's what people don't know. I have a son who actually went through court, and he actually has custody of his daughter that he fought for 2 years. It is difficult for men to go through the process, you know, because I was there with him, you know, crying and wondering, whoa, wait a minute, he's doing all this for this child, and we're seeing everything that's happening on the other side. But you don't see him as the better parent. And even during that time, my son actually had to pay child support, and he actually had temporary custodial custody. So you know what that's like, to pay child support to someone who actually only get their child every other weekend, and you have the child.
What about paying child support and you don't get to see your kid?
Well, that's where that 27 comes in. You make those arrangements, and when the Rule 27 comes in, if they're not abiding by it, then you can actually have them put in contempt of court. So
that's good information.
That's something else. We went through that as well. You know, they're not picking up their child, they're not following through with it. So there is some that they could go out there and do in order to see their child, as long as they haven't been any harm to the child or anything like that.
Right. So Rule 27, for those who are struggling with fairness with visitation and things like that, check out Rule 27. Where can they look at this information at?
They can actually just go online and just Google Ohio Rule 27, and it'll tell them all about visitation rights.
And therefore, with that being said, no more fighting and arguing back and forth. Just in these kind of situations, go downtown and do it the right way, especially if the other party is being difficult. Now, I don't want to side with just the men on that, because what I want the women to understand, and this I'm speaking directly to women who are in situations where the dad is just not doing anything. And I've been in conversations with some young ladies before about when they would complain about, you know, the baby's dad not doing anything or not giving them nothing, or favoriting one kid over the other and things like that. And what I share with them is, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do.
Right.
Because like I have explained to you what I was telling my daughter when her situation was not consistent. And she was actually putting hope in something that wasn't consistent. And you never want to put hope in nothing consistent. I even told her one day, girl, if you get it, shing, and if you don't worry about it. But don't build your life around an inconsistent person that is not paying child support. You can't even really build your life around if you're getting child support, because you never know. They quit, they hide, they're clever. They hide and things like that. But I will say this. And I think I should share this because me and my kid's dad, we're very good friends now. We have an understanding. But I remember I had put him on child support, and it was really, I wasn't going to do it, but because we were going through a divorce at the time, my attorney insists. Yes. But while we were married, that wasn't taking care of the kids was never an issue in our marriage. We got divorced for other reasons. And he always took care of our kids. And my attorney kept driving it, get child support order. And I did. And I'm grateful that I did because of some of the things that transpired afterwards. And it was nothing where he didn't want to take care of the kids, but it was other things that would come up, and I didn't like excuses. And I was trying to explain what all I needed, and it was always on his terms. And I didn't like that. So I went and filed child support, and of course it did happen because at the time when I went to file, I had filed and they based it on minimum wage.
Not much.
So that's not really much. I mean, I was grateful because I know that there's some women out there being like, I wish I could have some child support on minimum wage. But again, when your kids are, minimum wage might work when your kids are small, but by then my kids are becoming teenagers and things like that, and they were involved in a lot of sports. And I'll never forget being quoted $1,000 for my daughter to cheer high school cheerleading.
And you don't get that.
I'm like, oh my God. So there was costs that were coming up. It's not just about going out to buy a pair of tennis shoes or they have clothes. There's other costs. There's school there's fees at school, field trips. There's all kind of it costs to go to school. Right. It really costs to go to school, because I was thinking about when I would go over to Jamaica and things like that, and I don't want to misquote this, but I might be wrong, but I thought that over there in these foreign countries, they have to pay. It's not a privilege to go to school. You have to pay. I might be wrong on that one, but I know there's some places overseas where they have to pay to go. It's not a privilege. You don't just go for free. But here in America, by the time the school system taxes you, especially when your kid is graduating, it's almost like you got to take out a loan just to get to graduation. And I don't know that men or whoever doesn't have custody who is actually paying the child support, I don't know if they really understand that, or the ones that aren't paying child support and thinking that handing somebody a few dollars a week is doing it. There's a lot of cost to raising children. So with that being said, I got my child support, and you know what? I never asked him for anything outside of there because I felt like I was getting what I was supposed to get. But there was times where we went through spurts where he wasn't working. He would not work at one place. I'm not saying that he would quit on purpose, but he would not freely tell me when he would get another job somewhere else, because who would want to tell the person that has the child support order, okay, by the way, Kelly, I'm working at such and such. But this was before Jesus. I was clever that I had schooled my kids. When you go over there for the weekend, you let me know if you see a hat, anything with a name, because my ex-husband did construction work. I said a t-shirt, anything, and if you don't know the word, write it down and bring it home. And that was kind of the way that I had to track down where he worked at, and it worked. I mean, at that time, it worked for me, and then I would turn it in, and the child support would start again. But I hustled. And there's a difference between I didn't feel like arguing. I did what I got to do. I'm going to do what I got to do to raise my kids, Risa. If that meant that I had to get in my car and sit by your house and follow you to work to find out what you're doing. So this is my commercial. If you want your money and he's refusing to pay child support and he's ducking and dodging, not letting you know where he worked, if you got to get in your car and spy, do what you got to do.
Well,
do what you got to do.
It's much easier today to actually...
Maybe I shouldn't tell that advice.
That's okay, because
Yeah.
it's much easier today to get that information, because if I'm correct, if you work in the state of Ohio, all companies have to abide by that law and report child support when you get a job. So therefore, you don't have to look anymore.
But sometimes it was taking too long for me.
Normally, they really catch up really fast, and then there's the arrears. So you have that. So you don't have to do all that extra work to try to find out where he works. And get this, not only are they doing that, they're also doing research to find out if you have a bank account.
Ooh.
If you have a bank account, and they'll tell you your money has been frozen. And you have so many days to say why they shouldn't take your money if you're in arrears, and then they will strip your bank account.
Men gonna be taking their money out of the bank and put it in the mattress.
So if you're behind, you need to pay it, because they will find your account and strip it. They will freeze it, and anytime you put anything in there, the bank is obligated to report it to child support and turn it over.
And so there's ways. So the advice I'm giving is stop arguing with that person that ain't doing what they supposed to be doing, and do what you got to do. Let me back up. I don't want to say do what you got to do. That was the old Kelly way. Let's scratch that. That's not the way to do things. But what I want to say to you is don't argue. And if something is not consistent, if you need to go downtown and file child support, that is more consistent than a person that doesn't have, what do we call that, supervision on how they're paying their child support. So in that, actually, I would like to direct our attention to a story in Genesis. I don't know if you knew this, but the first deadbeat dad in the Bible, we would have to say Abraham. I was kind of shocked, and I didn't even know if I wanted to form my mouth to say the first man who seemed to be a deadbeat dad. And I will be teaching out of Genesis chapter 21, and we're going to start with verse 14. And Abraham rose up early in the morning and took bread and a bottle of water and gave it unto Hagar, putting it on her shoulder, and gave her the child and sent her away, and she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. And the water in the bottle was spent, and she cast the child under one of the shrubs. And she went and sat down over against him a good way off, as it were a bow shot. For she said, Let me not look upon the death of the child. And she sat over against him and lifted up her voice and wept. And God heard the voice of the lad, and the angel of God called to Hagar out of heaven, and said unto her, What aileth thee, Hagar? Fear not, for God hath heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him in thy hand, for I will make him a great nation. And God opened up her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and went and filled the bottle with water, and gave the lad to drink. What I like about this story, and what I believe that will help those of you watching, and has helped me as well, is there is going to be time. Everybody is not going to do the right thing by you when you have children. Everybody is not always going to do the right thing. And what I want to say to you is, just like Hagar, Abraham sent her away with, what they say, some bread and some water. Risa, I don't know. I couldn't have been Hagar, because what I'm thinking about when I was reading this, I was like, for real, Abraham? Some water and some bread? And I was like, that was just dog. I'm like, well, how long was it supposed to last? You know, by the time they wandering through the hot desert, they was in the wilderness. She didn't, and when it said wander, that means she don't know where she was going. And I know that that's probably how some of us, or some of you, have felt when it comes to having to raise your kids on your own. Whether he's rationing out what he wants to give you, maybe it's a few dollars here or a few dollars there, or maybe he's not giving you nothing at all, or you might even be someone that may be raising a child where the man is not even claiming your child, and you're left there with your water and your bread, or maybe nothing to wander. And wandering is like just aimlessly wandering places, and that's how it feels in life when we're left alone to fend for ourselves, not only for ourselves, but to fend for a person that's dependent upon us. And that can be a lonely, lonely place to be, and a very frustrating place. And the Bible tells us that she began to weep. She set her child afar, she sat him under a shrub, and I like that because if they're in the wilderness, that means the sun is beating down, it's hot. So she cared enough to put him under the shade. But because of the condition that they were in, she felt the need to separate herself for a little bit, and she went and she cried. And I can just imagine how she felt like, the water spent, that means the water gone, the bread gone, I ain't got nothing. And it's just me and this little boy out here. Lord, what am I going to do? And I'm sure some of us is looking at these paychecks like, what am I going to do with this? Or the little $5 he done slid us, what am I supposed to do with this? I'm reminded of the movie Friday when Smokey's mom gave him the $1 to go get her a pack of cigarettes. And he was like, this ain't enough. She said, make it enough. Right. And that's kind of what some women are left with. Somebody might hand you $20. The man might hand you $20. And you might say, this ain't enough. This ain't enough for the cheerleading fees. This ain't enough to buy groceries. And he basically said with his action, make it enough. And what really, really, really what I want us to focus in on is there are going to be times where we're going to be frustrated. Mm-hmm. There's going to be times when you're going to want to cry. There might even times where you're going to want to go over there and kick the door in. But whatever state that you find yourself in, it's okay to cry. I'm not going to tell nobody, don't cry. That's a feeling. Right. It's okay to cry, but what we don't want to do is cry and then go cut up tires and cut up clothes and things like that. It's okay to cry. That lets God know we're hurting. Mm-hmm. And when the person that is supposed to be responsible for your child is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, that hurts. Especially if it's someone you have been with and have been in a relationship with, that hurts. Not only does it hurt us, we hurt because of what we see the child is going to end up going through. And yeah, they may be 2 years old today or 3 years old, but they as they begin to grow, there's some explanation that they're going to be asking for. Where's my dad? Or if dad is the custodial parent, where's my mom? And then we have to be careful not to say some of the things that are going on around children. Exactly. Some stuff is left, just like when Hagar separated herself. We don't see where she was walking around with him talking about your daddy's sorry, that no good so-and-so, he ain't nothing, he ain't nothing but a bum, a broke, you know what, things like that. We don't find Hagar saying that. But what we did see is Hagar cried. Mm-hmm. She was upset. She cried. Not only that, God hears. Her son began to cry. And God says, Hagar, what's up? I'm paraphrasing that. What's up? I hear the little boy crying. What's going on? The cries of your son have come up. He's sitting there by himself. He probably don't see his mother. He don't understand what's going on. And a lot of times our kids don't understand what's going on. But sometimes, there's been plenty of times where I wanted to say something in front of my kids, but I didn't. I chose not to because that was between me and their father. And again, the Bible tells us that God told her. He spoke directly to her. It says, God heard the voice of the lad, and the angel of God called out to Hagar from heaven and said, what's up with you? What's going on? He's checking on her. And we serve a God that when we have deadbeat dad or a deadbeat mom or whatever the case may be, we serve a God, Risa, that hears our cry. Now, he ain't trying to hear us cutting tires and busting windows, but he hears our cry. He says, Hagar, what is ailing you? What's going on? What is the problem? But then he follows up, girlfriend, and says, fear not. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times with our frustration and things like that, it's because we're scared. Exactly. We're scared. And it says, for God hath heard the voice of the lad where he is. Then he tells her, because we can't just sit in our pity parties. He says, arise, lift up the lad. That means lift up your kids, girl. Get up, take them kids, and hold him in thy hand, for I will make him a great nation. When God spoke that to him, what God is saying to her, regardless if Abraham then gave you that little bit of water and that bread, okay, it's gone. It is what it is. But it ain't even about Abraham, Hagar. It's about what God can do. Exactly. So he says, I'm going to make him a great nation. It didn't say baby dad was going to make him a great nation or ex-husband was going to make him a great nation or whatever. It says, I'm going to make him a great nation. That means God provides provision. He's the one that is going to actually lift us up out of our mess. He's the one that's going to provide ways for us to survive. He is, like the Bible tells us in, was it in Exodus? Who am I? Say that I am that I am. God can be whatever you want him to be. Then God opened her eyes and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the bottle with water and gave the lad to drink. What that says is when the provision of the man went, God kicked in. It didn't say Abraham came out there with no jug of water and saying, okay, y'all ran out, here you go. Just like when we ran out of funds or we got to rob Peter to pay Paul. God opened up her eyes. So God is going, if we can get to a place to where we quit cussing, going off, and complaining about what he ain't doing or what she ain't doing, and lift up our eyes to heaven and ask the Lord, what's the next step? And God will open up your eyes that you will be able to see the water and fill your bottle so you are able to give your kids something to drink. Just like Hagar. He opened her eyes. She saw a well. So God, what I'm saying to you is we don't necessarily need God to provide the well in the sense that Hagar needed, but he can open up the well of blessings to be able to bless you and your kids. And I'm not saying that dudes should get off the hook or whatever, but I would not be fighting with nobody or begging nobody for no dollar or $20 or $100. What you need to do is express what you feel to God, and I guarantee you God will make provisions for you and your children, because these other things are resources. God is the source. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope that you were able to take something from this as well as I was able to take something from this. And Risa, again, thank you for joining us. What a wonderful conversation. And I would just like to thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next time.